We have one right now.
We got our online people. Okay. Oh, let me know when we're on here.
You're good.
I'm good.
Yep.
Hi, everybody. Gotta arrange myself here. All right, welcome back for our week 3. And let's see, it looks like we have Dave and Nancy joining us online. And we've got our part of our usual crew here in the studio. So I'm not sure if other people are going to kind of drift in. But we can just go ahead and start since most of us are here. Let's see, it looks like Nancy is still connecting to audio. Dave, let me ask you, I don't know if this is the first time in the class, did you receive a Food Smarts book, or would you like us to send you one? And if you don't want to respond verbally, you can just type it into the chat. And Sean will get your information if you need a book. And it looks like Nancy's still trying to, oh, there's Nancy. Hi, Nancy. Also, same question for Nancy. If you didn't receive a Food Smarts book, let us know. You can just type into the chat if you like, or unmute yourself and verbally respond if you feel comfortable with that. And we can get your information. If you do have a book, then you don't need to worry about responding. So, all right. Well, welcome, everybody. This is our 3rd class in the Food Smarts series. If you're new, my name's Julie Tharalson. I am registered dietitian, and I'm with the Agency on Aging. And we are putting on this 5 weeks Food Smarts class on just all things nutrition and cooking, because obviously that's a really important part of having good nutrition. Nancy, it looks like you are saying you didn't receive the book. Sean, can you reach out to her and just get her like an email so that we can, Nancy, we can send a book out to you, but Sean will collect that information from you, and we'll send it to you. Looks like we have Maria joining us as well. Hello, Maria. Maria, if you could let us know whether or not you have a Food Smarts book, we're happy to send one to you. If you don't, you can just type into the chat if you like, and then Sean will assist you with that. All right. So we have talked about a variety of topics. We've talked about food safety in the kitchen and why that's important. You know, if people over 60 tend to get, if you do get food poisoning, you tend to get sicker and with, just not so good outcomes. So we talked about preventing that. We've talked a little bit about adding fruits and vegetables to your diet. We're going to continue to talk about that this week. But what we're going to do is, this week is in our book, we're going to flip to the section called Creating a Balanced Meal. So if you look at page 32 in your book, and if you don't have the book, that's okay, just listen and we'll, as we go along, you'll be able to know what we're talking about. But everything that I'm saying is in the book. So, and we're not going to go over everything in the book. Feel free to go back and read, but there's a lot of really good information in here about nutrition in general. So on page 32, you see my plate, right? Does this look familiar to anybody? Have you guys seen this before? Yeah? Okay. What this is this used to actually be what we call the food pyramid, and it's like all the different food groups. And the government, the USDA, Department of Agriculture, they came up with this My Plate to replace the food pyramid. And all it is really is just a picture that illustrates what a healthy diet should be and what it should be made up of, right? When I say healthy diet, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? If the doctor says you need to eat a healthy diet, what's the first thing you think of?
Eat lots of vegetables.
Eat lots of vegetables, right? Okay, what else? Anything else you think of?
Fruit.
Fruit, okay. What else? Anything?
Water. That's not part of the diet.
Well, water is part of the diet. It's actually really, really important. We'll talk a little bit about that, right? I think most people kind of think about fruits and vegetables. That's like the first thing the doctor says, you got to eat more healthy. That's the first thing most people think, right? Most Americans don't eat enough fruits and vegetables. So that's not a bad thing to think. But if you look at this plate on page 32, you're going to see that it has fruits, vegetables, grains, and protein. And then dairy out here. And it doesn't necessarily have to be dairy. That's just like a calcium-containing product, right? Dairy is just an easy way to get calcium. But if you can't drink dairy, you can have a perfectly healthy diet without that. But what these are representing is how much of your plate should be covered with these foods. So if we take a look at this plate, you're going to notice that half of the plate is covered with fruits and vegetables, right? So, and that's exactly what it means. If you're going to have a healthy diet, about half of what's on your plate every time you sit down to eat a meal, it's really healthy if half of it is fruits and vegetables, right? And then we've got protein, which is about a quarter of the plate, and then grains, which is another quarter of the plate. So let's talk about that a little bit. How many of you all have fruits and vegetables on half of your plate when you eat a meal?
0.
I mean, I even struggle with that, and I know it, but I do that sometimes actually. At dinner time, I always like to have a fruit and a vegetable so that half of, and it works really well. But I don't always do that, so it's hard to do that. It's something that you can kind of aspire to make a habit if you're not already doing that. Let's talk about what serving sizes are, and let's talk about how much fruits and vegetables we're talking about, how many servings a day you should have in your diet, okay? When I talk about fruits and vegetables, have you all heard how many servings per day you should have of fruits and vegetables in your diet? Yeah, 5 a day, right? You raised your hand with 5. Yeah, 5 a day is a recommendation, okay? 5 servings of anything sounds massive. It really does. Like, I can't eat 5 servings. That's insane. Well, the thing to think about is what exactly a serving size looks like. Okay, so when we're talking about fruits and vegetables, I brought my rubber food. So I have like little rubber vegetables here. This is green beans and this one is broccoli. A serving size of vegetables, cooked vegetables, if you hold your hand out like this and you kind of cup it a little bit and you put vegetables in there, that's about a serving size. It's not a lot. So even if you don't have rubber food you can look at the palm of your cupped hand and go, okay, well, if I were to put cooked broccoli in there, that's a serving. It's not that much. Okay, so if you really like broccoli, maybe you're eating 2 servings at your dinner already and you didn't realize it. Okay, for fresh fruits and for fresh vegetables, the serving size is 1 cup. So that would be like 2 handfuls. So if you're eating something like salad, right, or you're eating sliced up, tomatoes or some other kind of raw vegetable, 2 handfuls is considered a serving. All right, and the reason for that just simply is because when you cook vegetables, the water gets driven away and the vegetable shrinks down, right? So raw is going to always be more than the cooked. For a piece of fruit, a serving about the size of your fist is a serving size. So if you're eating an apple or a peach or something like that, that's what you're looking for. Now, if you go to the grocery store, a lot of times you can find apples that like the size of 2 fists. That's 2 servings, okay? Or if you're eating a larger piece of fruit like a grapefruit or a really large banana, that could be 2 servings right there, okay? So when I say 5 servings, I think sounds like a lot more than it actually is, all right? So that's the fruits and vegetables that we're talking about. When we're talking about sliced up fruit, like let's just say you're eating something like watermelon. Okay, how many people eat a piece of watermelon that's that size? I don't. I could eat like half a watermelon. If you sat me down with a watermelon in the summertime, I could probably eat half of it, which would be all my fruits and vegetables for one day. Also a lot of sugar, so I don't recommend that. But this is a serving, this is what one serving of watermelon looks like. It's not that much. It's like one little wedge. Okay? So I'm just showing you these so that you have some awareness of what portion sizes look like. So with the fruits and vegetables, the recommendation is a minimum of 5 servings per day. And actually the upper end of that is 9. So 5 to 9 servings of fruits and vegetables per day are associated with good health. Okay, so people who eat more fruits and vegetables tend to just be healthier than those who don't. If you're eating something like berries or something like that, again, it's going to be about a half a cup. So what you would fit in your cupped hands. If you're eating strawberries or blueberries or blackberries or something like that, or cut up melon, right? This is rubber cantaloupe. If it was cut up in the palm of your hand, that would be about a half a cup. Okay? Now, with your fruits and vegetables, you do want the majority of them to be vegetables rather than fruit. Okay? And that's just because fruit has a lot of extra sugar in it. It is healthier because it's coming from fruit, but vegetables, so if you're eating, say, 5 servings a day of fruits and vegetables, 3 of those should probably be vegetables and maybe 2 are fruit. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. We're going to talk about getting to these goals as we go through today. So right now I'm just kind of telling you how many servings and what servings look like so you can have kind of an idea of what a healthy diet looks like. Okay, when we're talking about using this plate here. Okay, so fruits and vegetables, 5 to 9 servings a day. Protein, let's talk about protein. When I say protein foods, what kind of foods am I talking about?
Beans and meat.
Beans and meat, sure. Nuts, fish, any of those kind of things. Eggs, cheese actually is considered protein as well, right? Anybody know what a serving size looks like?
Like the size of a deck of a card.
Yeah. This is supposed to be a piece of salmon. It's little, right? If you go to a restaurant and you order fish and they brought you this, what would you think?
Complaining.
You'd be complaining. Most restaurant portions are too big, right? You can get multiple meals. But that's all a serving size is, okay? Now, one thing that I want to mention is that if you are over 60, and I think I talked about this a little bit last week, you actually need a little more protein than you do when you're younger because your body is not as efficient as it was when you were younger at processing your nutrients and absorbing them, right? So maybe instead of the deck of cards, maybe you need like a deck and a quarter. A little bit more, not too much. It's not like, you need to get a whole side of beef to get your protein. It's just instead of the deck of cards, maybe it's a deck plus maybe another little extra bit. Here is what you need, okay? Has anybody ever heard of using your palm to estimate portion size? Okay, if you haven't, so the deck of cards is one analogy you can use for a serving size of meat. You can also use the palm of your hand. So if you take minus your fingers, if you just look at the palm of your hand and about the thickness of your hand, that's how much portion size is. So it doesn't matter if you're eating beef or fish or chicken or any of those things. For meat, that's about the serving size that you want to look at. You always have your palm with you so you can kind of look at it, right? So if you go to the restaurant, and if you go to the Chinese restaurant and they serve you like big, piece of chicken, you're going to go, oh, wow, that's like 2 servings of protein right there. For things like beans, again, we can use our cupped hand. About a half a cup of beans, okay, is going to be equal to a portion size So these could be like canned beans or beans that you cook or whatever you want. So we're talking about legume type beans. We're not talking about green beans when we talk about this. We're talking about black beans and pinto beans and kidney beans and garbanzo beans, those kind of things, right? We're also talking about lentils. Has anybody ever eaten lentils before? Lentils are kind of like, they're kind of like little tiny beans, right? They cook really fast because they're small, but same thing, about a half a cup, okay? So that's a serving size. An egg, one egg equals about 7 grams of protein, right? A piece of meat that is about the size of the palm of your hand, this is roughly about 3 ounces of protein, okay? 1 egg equals 1 ounce of protein, so 3 eggs would equal the palm of your hand, okay? Obviously, you don't want to go crazy and eat like tons of eggs every day just because they tend to be higher in cholesterol, which we know is not so healthy for heart. But eggs are nutritious, right? There is a lot of good nutrition to be gotten from eggs, and the protein is really high quality. So if you enjoy eggs a couple of times a week, that's totally fine. You can do that without any concern. Okay. The other cheese is the other thing that that falls into the protein group. Okay. Everybody, hold up your thumb. All right, look at your thumb. All of these portion sizes, incidentally, are in this book here, okay? If you look at your thumb, if you had a piece of cheese that was about that size, that's about 1 ounce of protein. Okay, so you have a piece of cheese of this size, it's 1 ounce. So if you have 3 thumbs worth of cheese, that's the same amount of protein in our meat or our beans. Okay? Cheese, like eggs, are something that you don't want to eat lots of every day because it tends to be higher in salt, but it also tends to be higher in cholesterol and saturated fat, which are not so good for your heart. So much like the eggs, yeah, you don't want to eat it every single day, but having it in your diet as a couple of times a week, but not more than that, is perfectly fine. Okay, and it doesn't matter. It could be any kind of cheese. It could be cottage cheese. It could be cheddar cheese. It could be, any of those kind of cheeses. Okay, the protein content is really high and good. Okay. The other protein group are nuts. Nuts are really high in protein. They're also really high in fat, but they're healthier fat. So the fats that are like, say, in walnuts or almonds or something like that, they're mono and polyunsaturated fats, which are really good for heart health, but they also have a lot of calories in them. So if you're somebody who's like trying to lose some weight, you don't want to go super crazy with almonds or walnuts and stuff. A serving size of nuts is about 1/4 cup. Okay, so if your hand like this, if that's a half a cup, it's going to be about half of that. Okay. So if you have those with what you're eating, if you're eating a salad and you throw some nuts in there or something like that, it's going to give you a nice little dose of protein, and it's also going to give you some healthy fats. All right. So how much protein do you actually need? Okay. Most people need about 3 to 4 servings of protein per day. Okay, so it's not a bad idea, especially when you are over 60. Every time you eat a meal, have a source of protein with it, whether it's meat or beans or nuts or cheese, right? We didn't talk about other forms of dairy. We talked about cheese. Some things like yogurt also have a lot of protein in them. This is it's not real. It's plastic, but this is Greek yogurt. Okay, have you guys tried Greek yogurt before? Okay, Greek yogurt is a little thicker than regular yogurt. And that's because one of the things they do is they strain it. So they strain some of the liquid whey protein out, but it concentrates the other type of protein called casein that's in the yogurt. And as a result, what happens is Greek yogurt is much higher protein than regular yogurts. And it also tends to have less sugar in it, which is kind of a double good thing, right? So if you're somebody who likes yogurt, I would, and you're older, I would highly suggest trying Greek yogurt. And if you like Greek yogurt, I would kind of stick with that a little bit more than the regular yogurts because you're just going to get more protein out of it. It's just called Greek yogurt. This is plastic. It's not real yogurt. It's just a Greek yogurt, just like, yeah, like Greece, Greek. So, and you'll see it right on the label. And it's really popular in the grocery store right now. It's really easy to find. So you can, go in and you'll see yogurt and you'll see Greek yogurt. And there's lots of different brands out there. But it's going to have a really good dose of protein in it. And as I said, generally less sugar, right? We're going to talk about food labels, I think, next week. And we're going to talk, so you'll know what to look for on the food labels in terms of sugar and things like that. So you can, but for right now, what you can do is if you're looking at Greek yogurt, look at where it says added sugars and just find the brands that have less added sugars, like fewer grams. And those are going to be really good, good for you. Okay, better choices for you. Yeah. Yeah, well, peanut butter falls in with nuts, right? So portion size of peanut butter is about 2 tablespoons, okay? Which is kind of, that maybe doesn't sound like a lot, but if you're making a peanut butter sandwich and you measured out how much you probably put on your sandwich, it probably comes out to about 2 tablespoons, okay? Really great source of protein, high fat. So again, if you're somebody who is trying to lose weight, it may not be the best thing to choose. It doesn't mean don't choose it. It just means maybe don't eat it every day because it's higher in calories. But it's also really good heart healthy fat. Okay, so you just kind of have to decide what's best for you there. One of the things that in the United States we have every 5 years, the government issues guidance on what the latest research is telling us on what the healthiest diet is, what kind of foods we should be eating. And really over the last couple decades, we're seeing the same thing over and over again, and that is, and they're talking about it even more now, is to be really healthy, it's a really good idea to try to replace some of the animal sources of fat in your diet with plant sources. Okay? It does not mean that you have to become vegetarian to be healthy. If you want to be vegetarian, that's totally fine. But research is showing us that cutting back on animal sources of protein, such as meat and dairy and eggs, and replacing them with plant sources, people who do that tend to be healthier. All right? So it's just something to think about. And nowadays, because this has become such a thing, it's easier to find plant sources of protein. You don't really have to go to like a special health food store to get stuff. You can go into a regular grocery store and buy foods that that are meat replacements or meat-free and things like that. But you don't even have to buy special products to do that, right? Something like tofu. Let's talk about tofu for a second. Who's eaten tofu before? Yeah. What is tofu made out of? It's beans, right? So we just talked about how beans are a great source of protein. By weight, beans are about 20 to 25% protein, right? What does tofu taste like?
No taste.
It tastes good.
It doesn't have any taste. It's very, I mean, unless they've done something to it, like fermented or whatever, it doesn't have any flavor to it. So that, and same thing with beans, really. I mean, if you eat, kidney beans or garbanzo, they don't have a real strong flavor to them. Now, the beauty in that is that you can make them taste like whatever you want, right? So if you can make, depending on the flavorings you're using, you can make tofu taste, Asian or Italian or Mexican or whatever you want to do with it, it has no flavor. It will literally take on whatever you put on it, which is kind of neat. So, and I think sometimes people don't necessarily recognize that. They'll say, well, I don't like tofu. I'm like, well, it doesn't taste like anything. And you can get it in different textures, right? You can get a very sort of creamy tofu that you can make, smoothies and things like that. You can get very, very firm tofu that you can cut up just like it's chicken. Cook it up, you can fry it, you can saute it, you can do whatever you want with it. I'm just throwing that out there. That's something that you can look at if you've never tried it before, but it is a good plant source of protein. Okay, beans are another one, and actually a lot of what I'm going to be cooking during these classes, including today, we're going to be using beans. And like I said, beans, 20 to 25% protein by weight. The other advantage of beans and using plant source proteins over meat is cost. Last week we talked about if you're on a fixed income, you don't want to waste a lot of money on food. And of course, if you've been to the grocery store lately, you know everything's getting more expensive. Well, meat is right along with that. And actually eggs are like really expensive right now too. So plant sources of protein such as beans, so I have a can of black beans right here. This is going to be considerably cheaper per ounce to buy beans than it is going to be to buy meat, right? And healthier too. I'll talk more about this as we get into our recipe here. So most of us are kind of, I've talked about this the last two sessions, but most of us, when we eat what we eat and we shop for what we shop for, we have habits, right? We tend to eat the same kinds of things over and over again. We tend to shop when we're in the grocery store. We tend to buy the same things over and over again. And sometimes changing habits, like trying to eat more plant-based proteins to replace some animal proteins, might take a little bit of work, right? You have to remember, oh, you know what? I'm used to eating ground beef 3 nights a week. I'm going to try to change one of those nights to something with beans or something with lentils or something like that, right? So we'll talk about that as we continue on through the class. But it's going to take some active change to think, oh boy, what kind of protein am I eating now that is, well, first of all, how much animal protein am I eating? And are there things that I'm willing to replace with plants? Plant proteins, okay? All right. Every time you eat a meal, it's a good idea to have some source of protein, okay? So if you're eating breakfast, lunch, dinner, if you're eating snacks, things like that, having a little source of protein is a really good idea, all right? So just keep the portion sizes in mind. Palm of your hand, your thumb, okay? If we're eating beans, we're talking about a handful. Right? Those sorts of things. Okay. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions? And those of you who are online, if you have any questions, feel free to unmute and just ask your questions. I'm totally fine with that. Or if you're shy and you don't want to talk, you can put something in the meeting chat, and Sean can, if I can't see it, Sean can let me know if there's something I need to respond to. Okay. Oh, Dave, I see we got your, okay, I just want to, okay. Yeah. Perfect. I eat 5% plain yogurt. Yeah, that's I think it's pronounced Faye. F-A-G-E. That's a brand in the grocery store, and it's a Greek yogurt, and it's got really high protein, and they have different levels of milk fat in there. So anyway, so that's just one of them that you can take a look at. Okay, let's talk about grains. Okay. Grains we're going to talk about, let's see here, I think not today, but I think we're going to talk about grains a little bit more next week. Yeah, we're going to talk about it a little bit more next week. All right, so when I talk about grains, what kind of foods am I talking about? What do you guys?
Rice,
Rice, yep. What else?
noodles,
rice,
Wheat.
noodles,
Wheat.
wheat, sure, bread, tortillas, any of those things that are starchy, right? So starchy grain foods, anything that's made from a grain here, all right? So health research shows that there is much more benefit to eating whole grains over non-whole grains, all right? And I think that we all kind of understand this to some degree, right? That bread that's made with whole wheat is probably going to be a better choice than like Wonder Bread, right? Or just white bread. It doesn't mean that if you like white bread, you have to stop eating it. The recommendation is that about half of the grain products that you eat every day should be whole grain. So what does that mean? Right now, what I want you to do, and you don't have to share this with me, but think in your head, think about the types of grains that you typically eat. What do you have in your house right now? What kind of bread do you have? What kind of pasta? What kind of rice? What kind of crackers? What kind of cereals? Those are all, think about what you have in your house. And, and then think about how many of those are whole grain. And if you don't know, go home and look, because it'll tell you on the label if it's whole grain or not. All right. The other thing that will tell you if something is whole grain is how much fiber is in it. So if you have a piece of bread and it's whole grain wheat bread, it's probably going to have at least 2 grams of fiber and even possibly up to 4 or 5, right? If you have white bread, it's probably going to have maybe 1 gram, maybe no grams, right? Maybe a half a gram. Fiber is good. Fiber is something that we have tons of evidence that that the more of it you have in your diet, the healthier you tend to be, right? The other thing is that the more of it you have in your diet, the more regular you tend to be. And for people over 60, bowel regularity can be a big problem. And that has to do with aging, but it can also have to do with medications. So a lot of people are on medications that maybe slow their gut down a little bit, and you're more likely to have issues with constipation. Having enough fiber in your diet can help with that as long as you're drinking enough water with it. We'll talk about water in just a second. So if you don't know how much fiber is in the foods, the grain foods that you have in your house, take a look when you get home or when we're finished with here. Go look in your kitchen and just look at your boxes of grain foods, your bread, your cereal, and those sorts of things. Oh, come on in. Have a seat. So that'll give you a good idea, but roughly about half of what you're eating should be whole grain. Now, I mentioned earlier, if you really like white bread, I've taught this class and I've had people go, oh, I had a woman say, oh, don't take away my sourdough bread. I love sourdough. I eat it every day. I'm getting a hearty thumbs up from the back of the room here. If you really like sourdough bread and you want to eat sourdough bread and you're not willing to change to wheat bread, that's okay. Just look for other areas in your diet where you can sneak in whole grains. Maybe you love your sourdough bread, but you're willing to eat old-fashioned oatmeal, right, which is whole grain. Maybe you're willing to eat brown rice. Maybe you're willing to try whole wheat pasta, right? And if you haven't tried these things before, give them a shot. And if you don't know how to cook them, check out, you can go on the internet and find all kinds of recipes, including the nutrition or the eatright.org page. Remember I told you that you can put ingredients in there. So if you put like brown rice in there, it'll give you a bunch of brown rice recipes. Okay, but you could do that. You could just go to Google and put in brown rice recipes and just find something that you like. Personally, I pretty much only use brown rice now because I wasn't real sure about it. This was a few years ago, but then I thought, the fiber is really good. And so now whenever I make anything with rice, I use brown rice and I don't really notice the difference that much. That's just me. You may decide, no, I got to have white rice. That's fine. Just see if there's somewhere else in your diet where you can introduce whole grains. Where are you most willing to do whole grains, right? Because if you love sourdough and I tell you, well, you can't eat sourdough anymore, it's white bread, you have to use wheat bread, and you hate it, guess what? You're not going to do it. That's just not happening, right? So you're not going to do anything. The most efficient way, the best way to make permanent diet changes in what you're eating is to figure out what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do, and work with the stuff that you're willing to do. Okay? All right. So what are portions of grains? Portions of grains, you need 7 to 11 servings of grain foods every day. Again, that sounds like a huge amount. Oh my gosh, 11 servings, that's insane. I can't eat 11 servings of anything. But much like with the fruits and vegetables, we have to consider what serving sizes actually are, okay? A serving size of a grain, if you have like a loaf of sliced sandwich bread, and you took one piece out, that's a serving. So if you're eating a sandwich, that's 2 servings right there, okay? Any kind of cooked grain, use your hand again. Cup your hand, it's about a half a cup. Any kind of a cooked grain is a serving size. So if we're talking about rice or noodles or oatmeal or any kind of a cooked grain, barley, whatever you want, and it's cooked, not uncooked, but cooked, that's a serving size. Yeah, help yourself. Okay. And that's not much, right? So if you're eating rice, how many of you just eat a little palmful? I don't. Or if you're having spaghetti, right? You're having spaghetti and meatballs, right? Is that how much pasta you eat? No, you probably eat twice that, maybe 3 times that amount, right? So in a meal, you could be eating 2, 3, 4 servings of starch. So all of a sudden, 7 to 11 doesn't sound like as much anymore, okay? So of those 7 to 11 servings, try to make half of them whole grains, and that'll put you on a really good path, okay, to getting enough fiber and B vitamins and things like that, okay? And then dairy products. Okay, so dairy products are out here in the cup. And like I said, you don't have to have dairy products to have a healthy diet. Some people don't like dairy products or they can't tolerate them if you have lactose intolerance and those sorts of things. So even though it says dairy, this is actually like either dairy or like a calcium fortified food, right? Calcium is extremely important for bones, especially as you get older. Bone fractures, if you have osteoporosis, those sorts of things, you want to prevent osteoporosis, having brittle bones, having adequate calcium is a really good idea in your diet, all right? So if you prefer to use plant milks like soy or almond milk or oat milk or any of those milks that are out there, many times those are fortified with calcium. I would suggest before you buy any kind of an alternate milk, check and make sure that it has calcium in it, that it's calcium fortified, okay? But you should have about 2 to 3 servings of high calcium food per day, right? So a serving looks like, I'll just use my little yogurt again, about 8 ounces of yogurt is a serving, right? So not only with Greek yogurt are you getting lots of good protein, but you're also getting calcium out of it, which is really good. About 8 ounces of fluid milk, whether it's dairy or it could be like a nut milk or soy milk or something like that, about 8 ounces. That's about the size of, this is more like 6 ounces, this is supposed to be orange juice, but the size of an average coffee cup is about 8 ounces, right? That's a serving size. My cheese, right, the thumb here, that's going to give you good calcium, right? You don't need a whole lot of cheese to do that. Cottage cheese, the soft cheeses, that's about a half a cup. Okay, those are going to be good. So 3 servings a day of a calcium-containing food is something that will help with your bones. Okay? All right. Does anybody have any questions about that? Yeah?
I just wanted to mention that there is lactate milk, which is...
There is lactate milk.
Been treated as lactate.
Yeah, so it's an enzyme has been introduced to it to break down the lactose, and which is the problem, right? So, so if you want to use dairy milk and you have lactose intolerance, there is lactate milk or pills. You can take pills, lactate pill with it just has enzymes in it that'll break things down. So that's another option if you want to do that. Yeah. Okay, if you look on page 33, there is another model here. This was the Harvard School of Public Health put this one together. It's the healthy eating plate. It's basically the same thing as my plate, but it does have a few added items to it. It's got like healthy oils, which we talked a little bit about. Fats in your diet. You're better off if the fats that are in your diet are more liquid. Solid fats like the white fat on red meat or butter or shortening or partially hydrogenated fats, we're going to talk more about that when we talk about labels. Those are all hard fats at room temperature and they're really bad for your heart. So the majority of the diet, the majority of the fats that are healthier to have in your diet are liquid ones. So things like oils are really what we're talking about. Or fats that you're getting from nuts, right? Peanut butter, if you've ever mixed natural peanut butter, there's a layer of oil on there. The more liquid the fat is that you use in your diet, the healthier it is for your heart. Okay? We're going to revisit that again when we talk about labels, because we're going to talk a little bit more about like saturated fat and unsaturated fat and what all that means. Okay, but I'm just bringing it up here because they actually have it on here. That's a good thing. Water is also listed on here. Okay, how many of you feel like you drink enough water? Maybe. I have one person going, maybe. All right. As you get older, actually at any age, drinking enough water is super important, okay? But the older you are, the more easily you dehydrate. And I spent more than 20 years doing consulting in long-term care homes. And anytime we would have a resident have to go to the hospital, 95% of the time, the secondary diagnosis was always dehydration. Okay, and there's a few reasons why we tend to dehydrate a little bit more as you get older. One of them is that the physical makeup of your body in terms of fat tissue to muscle tissue ratio changes. As you get older, you tend to have less muscle tissue and more fatty tissue, okay? And fat tissue, lean body muscle tissue tends to be more associated with more water, right? You've heard that fat and oil don't mix. Like if I put, oil and vinegar in a jar, they would separate, right? Well, it's kind of the same thing. Your fatty tissue is fat, and so it doesn't tend to mix with water. So the more fat tissue you have, come on in. The more fat tissue you have, the less body water you tend to have. So that's one reason right there why people with more fat tissue tend to have less body water. Right? And you're already more likely to be dehydrated because of that. The other thing is that as you get older, you don't sense thirst as well as you did when you're younger, right? So thirst is sort of, if you're thirsty, your body is already dehydrated, right? But when you're older, there's sort of a delay there and you're not sensing it quite as well. So you may be seriously dehydrated if you're feeling thirsty already, so much more so when you're older. So how do we get around that? And I see you have a bottle of water with you, which is awesome. How much water do you think you guys need? Has anybody ever told you how much water you need? Anybody know? What have you guys heard?
8 glasses.
Yeah, 8 glasses a day. Okay, well, everybody hears 8-ounce glasses per day, right? And that's not a bad rule, but if you want to figure out a rule, how much you personally need, okay, what I want you to do is take your body weight in pounds. You don't have to tell me what that is, okay? But let's just say you weigh 150 pounds, and you divide that in half. So if I divide 150 pounds by 2, I get 75, okay? That's roughly how much you need in ounces. So 75 ounces of water per day, right? So 75 8-ounce glasses, 75 divided by 8, I think that comes out to, Sean, do you have a phone over there?
Yeah.
What's 75 divided by 8? I think that's about 8 ounces or 7. I'm sorry, I'm not good at doing math on the spot.
35 by 8?
Yeah.
9.3.
Oh, 9.3. Okay. So if you weigh 150 pounds, you need about 9 8-ounce glasses per day. Okay? You have a 16-ounce water bottle right there. So that would be about 4 to 5 of those per day if you weighed 150 pounds.
Usually I only drink 2.
You drink
At the
2?
most.
Yeah. So what you can so what you guys can do at home is just figure out what your body weight is, divide it by 2, and that will give you sort of a rough number of how many ounces of water you should be drinking per day, okay? So if you have a water bottle that's, 32 ounces, you can just figure it out. Oh, I need to drink 2 of these, or I need to drink 3 of these, or 4 of these, or whatever the case may be, okay? The heavier you are, the more water you're going to need. Okay, so that's sort of a quick and dirty way to figure out how much you need, because 8-ounce glasses is sort of a decent general rule, but if you're a very small person or you're a very large person, it's not going to be tailored to you. This is just a way for you to tailor how much you need. Now, the other thing about water is that it not only comes from water that you're drinking and liquids you're drinking, but it also comes from the food that you're eating, right? Fruits and vegetables are extremely high in water, maybe 80 to 90% water depending on what you're eating. So if you're eating a lot of fruits and vegetables, you may not need to drink as much because you're eating a lot of your water. Okay, foods like meats and fat and stuff like that really don't have much water in them, but fruits and vegetables do. And so it's a good thing to remember, especially as we're getting into hot season. Right? The weather is going to start warming up, as we all know, sooner or later. Making sure that you're drinking enough water and eating fruits and vegetables will help you stay hydrated, okay? One of the things, if you are over 60, something that I definitely recommend, even if you're under 60, carrying a water bottle with you, and just drinking, even if you don't necessarily feel thirsty, you don't ever want to get to the point where you feel thirsty, because that means that you're already a little dehydrated, all right? And when it's super hot outside and you're sweating, you're losing more water, you probably may even need to drink a little bit more depending on how much you're sweating. So carrying a water bottle is a really good way to stay hydrated, and it's a really good way, it can be a really good way to stay out of the hospital, right, to avoid being dehydrated, okay? So anyway, so that is on the healthy eating plate, they add the water on there as well. So I just wanted to mention that and give you an idea of how much water you should be drinking. All right. Have I talked to you guys enough? Why don't we cook? You guys want to cook? Let's cook a little bit. Okay. All right. So today I am going to be making veggie quesadillas. Okay, and I think what I'm going to do, actually, you know what? I'm going to leave all these out. I think you're doing the overhead shot, right, Sean?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to leave my rubber food out so you guys can see it here. And I am going to disappear off camera for a moment and wash my hands, and I will be right back. All right, so, oh, and I have my water too, actually, so I'm going to drink my water. Okay. What we're going to be cooking today, as I said, we're going to do a veggie quesadilla, and we're going to include vegetable protein in the form of black beans, okay? I already talked about, I just am using canned black beans here. These are low sodium, and I actually rinsed them in a colander, so I got rid of a lot of the extra salt, any remaining salt that's on them. This recipe comes from eatfresh.org. So and it's just called black bean and vegetable quesadillas. For those of you here in the studio, I gave you a printed out version of this recipe, but you can easily find it online, okay? All it is really, how do you make a quesadilla? Well, a quesadilla is a pretty easy recipe, right? It's just pretty much cheese and a tortilla. I'm going to be adding black beans. I'm going to be adding some canned mild green chilies. I could use the hot, but I don't know everybody's heat tolerance here. I've got some fresh spinach, and I have a zucchini here, okay? So the zucchini, let's see, if you switch to overhead, Sean, can you capture the, oh, there it is. Okay, so we got the cutting board here. I'm going to move this back. You guys know what zucchinis are, right? So it's just a basic squash, summer squash. What I'm going to do with this is I'm going to chop off the top and the bottom. Maybe we'll put these over here. And I'm actually going to get like a cheese grater, and I'm going to grate zucchini on it. Grates pretty easily. And you'll see why I'm doing this in just a second. It actually makes for a really nice quesadilla stuffing here. Okay, so I have grated zucchini. All right, I'm gonna turn on my skillet, and I'm gonna add a little bit of oil. In this case, I'm using olive oil, but you could use any kind of oil that you have. Vegetable oil or canola oil or peanut oil, whatever you want. I am using let's see here. I'm using an induction burner for the first time. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but it actually heats using electromagnetic energy. So it's a really cool thing. Okay, so I'm gonna let my oil get warm here, get hot. And I'm just gonna start adding my vegetables. So I'm gonna add my zucchini. Oh, it's already starting to heat up. It's like really fast. I'm going to add in my black beans that I've rinsed. I'm going to kind of get these covered in oil. I have my, these are just cooked, chopped green chilies. Again, I got mild, but if you like spicy, you can get spicy hot, whatever you like. And then I'm going to add fresh spinach. And of course, this looks like a lot of vegetables. But that spinach, if you've ever cooked spinach before, is really going to kind of shrink down. So we'll let that go for a minute. Kind of clean up a bit. All right, and I'm going to start turning very gently, kind of tossing over the spinach so that it can start getting hot. It can start getting some of that oil on it, and it can begin to wilt down. So this will take just a minute or so. Whew, I'm going to try not to make too much of a mess, but... Okay, so while this is cooking down, we're going to do an exercise here. I can't remember, I think in the first session, I talked about nutrient density. Does anybody remember nutrient density? What that means? If not, that's okay, we're going to talk about it here. Nutrient density means that each bite, each mouthful of food, how much nutrition does it have in it? Okay? So let's talk about that. We just talked about how a quesadilla is made out of a tortilla and some cheese, right? And that's pretty much all your basic quesadilla has in it, okay? So let me ask you what you all think, and this includes all of you at home. Feel free to unmute if you want to, or you can join in the chat. What sorts of nutrition, what sort of nutrients do you think are in a quesadilla? A plain quesadilla, just cheese and tortilla. What do you think is in there if you had to guess? What nutrients? Protein, sure, we got some protein from the cheese. We've got a little bit of calcium, right? Because we talked about how dairy products have calcium in them, so the cheese is going to be contributing that. How about the tortilla? Are we getting any kind of nutrition from the tortilla? What do you guys think? We're getting grains, right? So we're getting some sort of carbohydrate, right? Carbohydrates are found in grains. And carbohydrates, if you don't know what carbohydrates are, it's an easy way to think about carbs is that they're just sugar, really. But they're good carbohydrates and not so good carbohydrates, right? So carbohydrates are kind of the same thing as putting gasoline into a car, right? If your car doesn't have gasoline, well, or electricity these days, you're not going anywhere. If you don't have enough carbohydrates in your diet, it's hard to have enough energy for your body to function the way that it needs to, okay? And grains are one of the ways that we get that. Okay, so carbohydrates. So basically with a typical quesadilla, we're getting some protein, we're getting some carbohydrates, we're getting some calcium, maybe we're getting a few B vitamins and some other minerals and things from the cheese, but that's about it, okay? Now, if I take that same quesadilla and I add these vegetables to it, what kind of nutrition do you think I'm adding? What do you guys think beans might have in them? Protein, we just talked about that, right? They have tons of fiber. Beans have tons of fiber. In fact, everything in this pan has lots of fiber in it, right? So all the vegetables in there's tons of fiber. I'm adding lots of good plant protein. I'm adding lots of B vitamins. The chilies are going to give me vitamin C. The spinach is going to give me lots of vitamin A, right? So if I take my typical quesadilla and I tuck this into it, am I getting more nutrition out of every bite? Yeah, I'm getting a lot more. If I'm putting this in my quesadilla, I'm eating the same amount of food basically. I'm eating a quesadilla, but I'm adding all kinds of other nutrients to it. That is called nutrient density. So the quesadilla with veggies in it is going to be more nutritionally dense than the plain quesadilla. All right? Okay, so can you see how this nicely kind of cooked down? Yeah. All right, at this point, I'm going to add cumin. All right? So this is what cumin looks like. Cumin, if you've ever tasted taco seasoning or you've ever smelled taco seasoning, what you're smelling primarily is cumin. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit of this for flavor. It's really nice. I'm going to add a little bit of salt, not too much. But one of the things that salt does is it helps your tongue identify flavors. Okay? So a little bit of salt will kind of help your tongue. You don't need a lot of salt. And when you're adding salt to things, you should never taste the salt. But a little bit of salt helps things become more intensely flavored. Okay. All right, this is done. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this bowl that I have that had our black beans in it, and I'm going to
I'm taking a cooking class.
This is all technical. Okay. I don't want to ignore anybody who's on there. Okay, what was your question?
That's one of the best tortillas I tasted. I can't.
That was one of the best ones you've had, huh?
Whole wheat tortilla would taste that good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because I think a lot of times we think, oh, whole grain pasta, or that's not gonna taste good. But when you try it, it's like, oh, it's kind of I don't really notice that much, And in this case, there's so much stuff in there. That's really what you're tasting. You're tasting the cumin and the vegetables and the cheese and the, all that kind of stuff. So that was a really easy dish. So. Oh, okay. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
Okay, can you all hear me at all? I think we have technical issues here.
Try again?
Okay, can you guys hear me at home?
They should now.
Okay. Okay, so hopefully everybody's hearing me. Apologies, we're having some. Okay. All right. If you can't hear me, just let me know. Just send a comment, and Sean will get right on it. So, okay. So the comments in here, this was a really good quesadilla. So I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. We just have a couple of minutes left, and I wanted to direct you to page 37 and page 38. And everything that I was telling you about about portion sizes, what portion sizes are, it's listed there, including how to use your hand for portion sizes. That's on page 38. So if you forget what I told you, it's just right there, okay? And then page 37 has portion sizes on there. All right, so you can take a look at that if you need to. Last thing that I'm going to mention, if you look on page 36, you see something called Eat the Rainbow. And all that means is variety. Fruits and vegetables come in a lot of different colors, right? So green and purple and yellow and all those, white, those sorts of things, just lots and lots of different colors. A lot of those colors that we see in fruits and vegetables have nutrient quality, right? They actually do serve a nutritious purpose in your diet. So for example, carrots are orange, right? Typical carrots that we have are orange. The orange is something called carotene, which can convert into vitamin A, okay? Green vegetables have something called chlorophyll. And chlorophyll also, and some of the other pigments, can serve purposes. There's a lot of research going on in what these plant colors can do to help us fight off certain diseases. There's a lot of research going on in there right now. But, something like the red color that you see in tomatoes and watermelon comes from something called lycopene. And, lycopene has been linked to maybe helping people ward off cancer. So a lot of this is still in the research phase. But one of the recommendations that comes out of that is the more colors of fruits and vegetables that you are eating, the more protection you are probably getting. So what that means is that when you're eating fruits and vegetables, just try to vary your colors, right? So if you're eating things like red watermelon and green lettuce and purple beets and deep purple blackberries or blueberries or things like that, lots of colors. More colors tend to be better. But honestly, even if you can't do that, eating some produce is better than eating no produce, okay? But think about variety, because there's a lot of evidence that shows us that that variety can be really healthy as well, okay? All right. I think I have probably talked to you guys enough today. because I've given you a lot of information. What we're going to be looking at next week, we're going to be in the section called Choosing Whole Foods, which starts on page 40. And we're going to be talking about how to use the grocery store to your benefit, what sorts of things to use. We're going to be talking about foods, eating foods in season and out of season. And so this has not only to do with ripeness, but this also has to do with how much you pay for fruits and vegetables in particular, right? If you buy something like strawberries in December when they're not in season, you're going to get not only strawberries that probably don't taste like much, but you're going to pay a lot more for them than you would if they're in season. So we're gonna talk about that, and we're gonna talk about whole grains, and then we're going to begin the discussion about the food label, and we'll continue that into the 5th session as well. Okay? All right. If we don't have any questions, if anybody online has any questions, go ahead and, I apologize, we had some technical difficulties. But as I mentioned, everything, if you have a book, everything that I'm talking about is in here. If you don't have a book, make sure that your information, you're just sending an email to Sean. I think people have already done that, and we will get a book out to you as soon as possible. But everything is in here. And anybody is welcome to come in studio and eat with us. So, all right. Well, I guess we don't have any more questions. So I will see you all next week, 10 o'clock in the same place. And have a great week.